All right, great. I see we have some people joining already that are very good with timing. Welcome to this webinar today. We're going to give people a little bit of time to kind of figure out all the technical advanced functions of Zoom. Even the most simple technical functions are sometimes very hard, actually. So just giving people some time. For the ones who are here so far, welcome to this webinar where we will be discussing donor screening, a little bit about Hatch's screening process and what we look for in a donor. And then we're going to go inside of the largest egg donor database in the United States, which, surprise, happens to be the Hatch one. And we're going to look at a couple of donor profiles that Alex, our donor program director, who will introduce herself, has pulled for us to have a look at. So we'll do that as well. Just until we wait and see if there's any other people joining us. For the ones who are here, you can actually ask questions during the webinar. So depending on if you're on the computer or a tablet or a phone, there's so many different options today. There should be a Q&A box somewhere. If you press that one, you should be able to ask questions anonymously even to us. Nobody else can see those questions, etc. So feel free to kind of put in any questions you might have during the presentation, and we'll make sure to come back to them afterwards and we'll answer them. Alex has a ton of experience of egg donation. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's no question that Alex cannot answer regarding egg donation, at least. If it's about anything else, who knows? But so really feel free to ask all questions you can kind of come up with today, and we'll try to answer those. All right, and we're going to keep the time as well. We're going to do about 30 minutes, 35 maybe, and then we're going to have some Q&A if there's any questions, and then we'll wrap that up. And we're going to send you the presentation afterwards, a recording. If you want to share with friends, with others interested in egg donation, anybody you think is relevant, feel free to share that, and so people can learn more about this very interesting topic of egg donation. All right, so let me just pop open my presentation. Always very nervous, but I have Alex with me today, so she will let me know if we cannot see this, but it should be fine, right?
We're good.
Happy. Great. All right, so first of all, we just love showing off some intended parents here. First of all, like this amazing journey, we sometimes forget about speaking about the soft values of this amazing journey, and not only egg donation, of course, but also surrogacy. It's really a teamwork, a amazing journey, a very special journey, which involves human beings, which we should never forget, the ethical standards that we want to uphold. So just love to have a couple of pictures remind us of that and how beautiful these journeys can be, especially this right-hand side with a couple and their surrogate. I think that's just an amazing picture. That really represents the surrogate's role in being there, being involved, but also, the couple is the couple and the surrogate is there to make a dream come true as some kind of almost guardian angel in that sense. So it's just a beautiful picture. I always look at that a lot when we do these things. Okay, so let's talk about today's schedule briefly. So we're going to do a quick introduction. We're going to talk shortly about Hatch and PFCLA, just so you know who's talking to you today and who we are, if you don't know already. We're going to speak about the timeline of an egg donation journey, just very briefly walking you through the step-by-step process and how it looks phased out in the timeline. Then Alex is going to speak about the basic qualifications and Hatch's pre-match donor screening process, what we look for in egg donor, the process itself, and also where to look and what to look for from an intended parent perspective. And then we're going to go inside of the egg donor database. If you haven't been inside already, you can register cost-free on our website. Fill out a little form there and you have full access to the database. And we're going to do a little bit of walkthrough. Alex is going to show us some basic functions, just walk around how it looks. And she's also pulled two donor profiles, actually four if we have the time, to look through how does that look, what kind of information do you get, etc. in this database. And then we're going to do a short Q&A. If we have any questions from you guys, the audience, feel free to put that in whenever during this presentation and we'll get to them in the end. All right, today's host, Alex, is here. A little bit under the weather, she's warned me about, but looking great and hopefully, sounding great as well. We'll see. So far, so good. Alex, you'll introduce yourself in a second, I think. So for me, I'm the international manager here at Hatch and our in-house IVF clinic, Pacific Fertility Center. More importantly, I'm a two-time father through surrogacy and egg donation. I'm an international intended parent out of Europe. We'll talk a little bit about client basis and etc. But we do have a fair amount of international intended parents, both for egg donation and surrogacy. I happen to be one of them that's used both Hatch and the clinic PFCLA through my journey. So I owe both Hatch and PFCLA a lot for my two kids. So that's a little bit about me. Alex, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited for everyone joining and for anyone that couldn't join now and will watch the recording later. This is such a huge step for everyone, considering to grow your family. I'm Alex. I head the egg donor program with Hatch. I've been with this agency for a long time, over 15 years, and I love it. I did attempt to be a surrogate. I did 3 rounds of meds, 2 failed transfers. Unfortunately, I couldn't carry it all the way through, but I do get it. I get kind of both sides. I get what it's, like for your body to not do what you want it to do. And I really empathize with IPs on that end. Overall, I'm just super excited to show you guys what, the egg donor journey looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's great, Dallas. I think all experience, from this comes from personal experience. And with our team having that personal experience, doesn't matter how far it goes this or that way, like things happen all the time. But having that experience, it does make that difference. Just talking about that humanitarian kind of aspect of everything that we're doing. So kudos to you and all women out there that do egg donation, surrogacy, didn't make it all the way through or not. Like doing that, attempting that, giving your time and effort and body basically for it. I think that's an amazing thing. So either way, thanks to you and all the women that do that. Shortly about Hatch and PFCLA, we're not going to spend a lot of time here. We want to speak about egg donation, but giving you a little bit of sense of who we are. Hatch is our egg donation and surrogacy agency. And not only are we an egg donation and surrogacy agency, we're also very lucky to have our own in-house IVF clinic, which is Pacific Fertility Center, Los Angeles. This is not a partnership as commonly does exist. This is an in-house clinic and agency. With that said, people use Hatch for egg donation only, or Hatch for egg donation and surrogacy, and sometimes just use our clinic, or sometimes they work with all of the services we offer in something called the Peace of Mind program, which is basically an all-inclusive service for everything imaginable that needs to be taken in having a baby through this kind of process. So putting it simply, we do everything non-medical on the Hatch side. The egg donation, surrogacy, all the legal insurance and coordination is taken care of through Hatch. And then on the clinical side, very kind of obvious, everything medical, or the gooey stuff I usually say, which is not a very nice way to put it, but all of the eggs, embryos, all of that is done on the PFCLA side. So the vision is doing one journey with one team and taking you through all of that without having to fragment this journey in different pieces. So that's what we call the Peace of Mind program. A little bit background on Hatch and our numbers so far. Our success rate in the donor surrogacy cycle stands at an amazing 99.5%. There's more to learn about that, so in a private consultation to discuss that further, but we are very proud of that number. The Peace of Mind program definitely helps of upholding that with that all coordination in one place. We have clients all over the world. Obviously, the United States, that would be weird if we didn't have that, but also internationally. So over 52 countries all over the world, meeting amazing intended parents from everywhere, speaking different languages, different cultures, different expectations, and how we meet those and make sure everybody has a comfortable, enjoyable journey is a great challenge, something that we really like doing. We have the largest egg donor database in the United States. If it hasn't been seen from those at this webinar, I think you already know that, but also of the fresh available egg donors, and putting emphasis on fresh and available. And Alex, you can talk to this a little bit later about fresh versus frozen maybe, but also availability and how ready a donor is to get going basically with the process. A number of years of experience is staggering. Alex, you've been here for 15 years, which only that is amazing. But even with your experience here, you're still more than 15 years behind when this agency was actually created, which is amazing. 8,000 journeys since the start, and having our own in-house clinic. Something that really is a huge benefit from that is having that physician oversight, given that agencies don't have medical doctors in-house, but we do have that amazing clinic, 6 double board certified IVF physicians. So we just love having that physician oversight over our process. And it makes us end up with really great quality surrogates and donors, which is obviously what we're looking for. A little bit about our clinic. The number of birds, Pacific Fertility Center Los Angeles, is in Los Angeles. I love when people ask me that, and I'm like, the name did not reveal that. No, okay. 13,500 birds. When we look at the donor surrogacy cycle of transferring an embryo to a surrogate, we are at a 82% first transfer pregnancy rate. Success rates are great, but also a little bit deceiving sometimes, depending on how clinics report them and what's behind those kind of numbers. What kind of patient do you accept or take on as a challenge as well? So there's a little bit of variation to that, but this is a good kind of general number. 30 years of experience and patients from all over the world, basically. These are some of our doctors that I mentioned before. Just want to pop in the quick picture of them. We're not going to go too deep here, but just to show them off, we are immensely proud of them and their work. And this is our new clinic as a last little slide. This is last year in February, we opened this new clinical location. Everything built brand new. So today, the agency and the clinic, a lot of the staff are actually intertwined and intermingled at the clinic, which is amazing. So it's just an amazing place where we carry out all of the medical work with our own IVF lab, amazing operations rooms. And I was there for the grand opening, and Alex, I know you were there as well. I felt like it's more like a spa. Some of these spaces are more like a spa rather than a clinic, so which is a nice thing to have, of course, when you're stressed about egg retrieval or a transfer or whatever. All right, great. So now you know who we are. Alex, I think if you don't mind taking a bit from here, because I know you know, obviously have a lot of experience on this. So just walking our intended parents through a little bit of the timeline of, you know, egg donation, how that relates to the clinic.
Absolutely. Thank you for your introduction. So when you're looking at, choosing an egg donor, you're going to go through the database and we will review what that looks like. Usually a donor cycle will be about 3 to 4 months long from the moment that you confirm the donor until the point of retrieval, right? So usually what happens is there are a lot of things that we do as your agency on the back end. We coordinate with your clinic or our clinic if you do end up working with our clinic. And we work on providing all the reports that will be necessary for your donor to go in to be seen in person by your physician. So we will work on getting her psychological evaluation done, which will be scored by an outside clinical psychologist. We will make sure that we have her speak to a genetic counselor. I feel pretty confident about saying that that specific report, the genetic history report, is something that, we offer that not a lot of agencies offer unless things have changed. But we've always offered this as an added bonus to our intended parents and our doctors to be able to just take a quick look at the donor's family history overall in a more in-depth report style. So they're going to discuss, the donor's family, any kind of genetic history that may be notable, any health history that may be notable, and then we will provide that copy of that genetic history report to the doctor, and you would get a copy for your records as well. Then not to be confused, obviously, with, genetic testing itself. Genetic testing will always be done at the clinic. So your doctor will test the donor for all those major diseases, such as Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis, things like that. Now, an advantage with going with a donor who's previous, for example, someone who donated before, is that a lot of those large tests have already been done. But also keep in mind that there are several testing panels out there, sort of like different brands of genetic testing, right? And doctors tend to prefer one over the other. So it's possible that even if your donor is previous, your doctor may still opt to do additional genetic testing using their preferred panel. So there's no real cutting of time there for the most part. Sometimes it just happens to be that the panel used was cohesive with what the doctor likes to use, and then we can bypass that. But genetic testing is the one that takes the longest to get results for, usually about 2 to 3 weeks. Once everything, is done, your donor is medically cleared, hopefully, right? Everything looks good. Then we will work on legal clearance. We usually assign attorneys to you and to the donor. We have a really wonderful list of attorneys that we've curated throughout the years that we've been working. None of these attorneys are linked to Hatch. There's no conflict of interest there. But again, because we've been around as long as we have, which, by the way, just to mention, we are the first donor database or the first donor agency to exist in the US. So we have a lot of experience there. it allows us to, recommend these great attorneys that are very familiar with fertility law specifically, which is what you need. Once we get legal clearance, then we will provide that to the clinic. That's when the clinic will be able to prepare your donor's calendar, which will say when she will start her medications and when retrieval will take place. That all in all usually takes about, 3 to 4 months when it's all said and done, just waiting on periods, timing, reports being back, results being back, legal, all of these different items. So that's what you're looking at. Now, in terms of matching, because I know that that's part of the timing overall. In terms of matching, usually what happens is, once you do a consultation with one of us, you'll be assigned a match coordinator, and that becomes your point of contact going forward. So any question you may have about any donor you see that you like, you will let them know, and they'll provide you details. They'll tell you things like, what the compensation is for that donor, if there's any travel involved in relation to your clinic. If they're previous, they'll provide you with stats for those cycles. You have an idea what those look like. And if they're first-time donors, something really neat that we're able to do because of this partnership with PFCLA is offer AMH results for first-time donors. So you do get visibility on their fertility picture overall, which is really nice. And, they'll walk you through the matching process. If everything feels good, they'll contact the donor. They'll make sure her availability blackout dates are all lining up. Then they'll send that donor's information to your doctor for pre-approval if you would like them to do so. Once we get that pre-approval and everything looks good, you want to move forward, that's when you'll get confirmation paperwork for the donor. Then once we get your forms back, we'll send the donor her forms. And then once we get her forms back, that's when, program fees for the donor match will be due, and that will solidify the match. And that's when that 3 to 4 month timeline really kicks in from that point. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for walking us through that. And I think there's more to consider, especially in kind of looking at surrogacy at the same time, when
Right.
that timeline, how that looks, mainly getting on a match list basically as soon as possible, because most agencies have a longer matching time with surrogates than they have of an egg donation cycle.
Right.
And then also questions about, when do I come in for my semen deposit and things like that. And that's also important questions to ask the clinic, so you have everything in place before you go ahead. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but matching officially with the donor without having a doctor in the clinic and having semen stored, it's not something we can do, right?
Not necessarily. Now, the semen could be after the match. We don't advise it. We just want to make sure that there's no delay, that there's no issue. That way, any testing that may be necessary on that semen is done in advance, and you can feel confident about your next steps. But you don't necessarily have to. It is just strongly advised.
Okay, great. Great. That's a question I get a lot. So now I know that. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Of
So
course.
let's look a little bit further and look at the basic qualifications. So speaking of donors, what do we actually look for in donors, and what do you, your team, and our doctors really think is important when it comes to this screening? So please take us through that as well, Alex, a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for us, some of the basic requirements are the ones that you're seeing here. Donors have to be between 19 and 30 years old, no more than 160 pounds, unless they're very tall and athletic and it's mostly muscle, then we make some exceptions there. But rule of thumb is, 160 is usually the cutoff. Good overall health. And we really want to work with women that want to actually help a family and are not just focused on the compensation, even though we get it. Compensation's great, and they are putting their bodies through a lot and they should have it, but we just don't want that to be the main focus of their wanting to donate. So we pay attention to all of these things.
Yeah.
Being that we have been around as long as we have, it allows us to be very picky. We do accept a very small margin of donors that apply.
All right. And when you talk about humanitarian motivation, and I mean, it seems kind of obvious in one way, but I do get intended parents asking, why do we find that important in donor? Because, they're just going to come in and donate their eggs, as the intended parents put it. So what do you think, why do you think that is important? And what do you see stands a donor apart who has that humanitarian motivation?
Absolutely. Look, the reality is that doing injections, doing those medications is not an easy task. So when you have a donor that's just solely financially motivated, they may very well feel overwhelmed once everything starts to really get going, and there's nothing else that's keeping them excited about the journey. So for us, we really want to make sure that we get it. Obviously, yes, if you can pay off some student loans and you can do all these things, of course, right? We're not denying that, but we do care about, and we do it for surrogacy as well. We do care about that humanitarian reasoning because overall, we do notice that it impacts the way that the cycle is going to flow in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, and I liked what you said there just about the note being like doing all of that tough work, those medications, like having something more motivating you, even those tough times. That's a really good thing, and I think that makes sense actually to have that extra kind of motivation pushing you forward, even in the tough times. Like I'm doing this for somebody else to have their dream come true, which I can imagine would be a strong motivation, but I have never done it myself and can't do it. So yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can tell you doing my 3 rounds of meds, that's one
yeah,
thing that I kept thinking about was my couple. And, that was surrogacy, but same thing, right? I mean, it's the same concept. You're just, it sucks to do those shots,
yeah.
So just having that extra motivation and really knowing that others are counting on you for this very special journey really, really does carry you through.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, walk us through then. We talked about accepting, being picky, etc. So, what do we look at and what do we look for in that sense?
Right. So, yes, donors do have to complete an extensive application and interview process. First they do the application, we review it. If things look good, then we will set up an actual interview with them. Interviews are always done through video because we want to make sure that we get a good sense of what they look like and their personality and so forth. And logistically, it just makes sense to do it that way. Of course, we love for those that, happen to live close enough to the office, especially before COVID. We would do it in person, but logistically, it just makes sense to do it through video. And it's really, really neat to be able to do that, to get that good sense of, who they are. Once they do the application and they do the interview is quite long. It goes through a lot of questions. Some are invasive questions. They're not easy questions to ask, but these are things that we need to know, per FDA regulation or for one reason or another. So once we get all of these things done, we will have the donor, if she's a first-time donor, we will set them up to go in to do AMH testing. So we will ask our clinic to provide an order. They will go to a local lab. They will do AMH. If it looks good, we do have a threshold of 2.5 as a minimum right now for egg donors to be accepted into the program. So if that looks good, then we will move on to adding them to the database and activating them. Now, I do want to give a little clause there that, the 2.5 threshold is something that we've implemented in the last 6 months. And there are donors that you will see in the database below that threshold. There are just, they've been active longer than since we've implemented that. And at that point, we will just work, directly on that case to make sure that we get all the information we need to get. And overall, you will see here the qualifications, right? We talked about age, make sure that they are having regular cycles, that, that reproductive health, that's where that AMH really clarifies this doubt. Healthy lifestyle, making sure that we look at, what their habits are, if they're smoking or drinking or doing drugs, we want to make sure that we eliminate all of these types of applicants, as darling as they are. We want to make sure that we eliminate as much as possible so that by the time you're looking at the database, you can feel pretty confident that, all of the boxes have been checked. Health, family, medical history, we'd look at that too. Our applications are very extensive. It talks about their parents, siblings, extended family, grandparents, and it goes in depth on what that health history is. So we look at that. And if we're ever iffy about an applicant, if we see something that we're like, we don't know if this is going to be an issue or not, we will ask the genetic counselors that we work with, and they will give us their input. And sometimes they feel, it's not going to be an issue. It's not really something genetic that will be a problem. Or if, sometimes we have to make that decision internally and we feel that it's doable, then we will do that. And an open mind. I mean, again, we touched on that already, just making sure that, donors that we work with are in it for the right reasons and that they want to actually help. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Great. And looking at these things over here, I think basically touching upon all of these as you spoke before, I don't see anything in kind of addition. Must have both ovaries. I guess we didn't mention that one, but seems kind of
Yes.
natural in one way to get as much eggs as possible. Yeah, so
Right.
great. All
Mhm.
right, so where to look? So just touching upon this subject on having the largest egg donor database and all that, which is important, of course, but for the ones looking at the Peace of Mind program, which is our all-inclusive program, it's also important to know that we really value you finding the right genetic link for your child. This is not our baby. We're not going to be genetic parents. We're just going to be the agency and we're not being involved, but that's as far as we're involved. We want you to have the right fit. So even if you do that Peace of Mind program, you can still find a donor somewhere else. Explore other databases. There are other many great ones out there. I know, Alex, you've recommended me a couple of them when I've asked you about other great donor agencies as well. So it's not about gatekeeping here and kind of just like it's going to be the hatch process or no process. We are open to that when it comes to attorneys, when it comes to egg donors as well. And then I think it's important, as you spoke to the timeline, Alex, and all of that, to emphasize that choosing one donor, if it isn't clear already, might not be the one that intended parents end up with. So
Right.
making like a list of the ones that you like, maybe 2, 3, 4 options, and then working off of that one. Hopefully the first option works true, but if it doesn't, then it's great to have a backup as well.
Absolutely. I agree with that very much. We have seen it where, cycles cancel. 9 times out of 10, the reason a cycle will cancel is due to genetics. Just there's no compatible match there. Maybe she's a carrier for a mutation that the sperm provider is also a carrier for, and it's not advised that they proceed. It doesn't mean that she's necessarily disqualified. It's just, this is the genetic match, and that's something that your doctor will help you through as well to make that comparison. But if that happens, we want to make sure that, you're able to jump right back into the database and find, the next donor that will be the one that we will go with. And, we really want this to work for you. Like you said, it's not about gatekeeping. And, even if you do find a donor elsewhere, what matters most is that this match feels right to you. But for us, we really love when intended parents find that second donor or a third, right? It's happened before, not often, but it happens. And we'll just pick right back up and we'll keep going. So, I mean, our mission is to, get you to the finish line and make sure that, you have your baby. And this part of the journey is so crucial for that.
Yeah. I wanted you to touch upon a little bit about frozen eggs versus fresh eggs just before we jump into the database. It's a very
Mhm.
common question about using frozen versus fresh. It is to some extent a medical question, best asked to a physician
Right.
as well. But obviously, given your 15 years of experience, please weigh in on that of frozen versus fresh. Just a couple of
Absolutely.
seconds on that before we jump into the database.
Absolutely, absolutely. So frozen, versus fresh, I can give you pros and cons. Frozen cycles you usually go through an egg bank for these. They're great in terms of, if you know that you only want one child and, maybe financially it's a better situation for you. It can be, a really great route to go, but you do have to have realistic expectations and just be prepared, right? Because numbers do dwindle a lot from egg retrieval to embryo creation. So for example, if I were to give you numbers, usually 80% of the eggs that are retrieved will fertilize, but then out of that, about 30 to 40% will become blastocyst, right? So for example, if you were to do a donor cycle and you got 14 eggs, let's just say, you should get about 10 embryos out of that, but out of those, you should have about 3 to 4 high quality blastocysts, right? So numbers do go down. And so when you compare that to a frozen cycle through an egg bank, they usually do cohorts or lots of 6 or 8 eggs. That's usually what you're limited to, unless you get multiple lots. But at that point now, you're almost spending, I mean, you are spending, if not more than just doing a fresh cycle. So that is one thing that you have to consider, just overall how many eggs or embryos you're going to end up with. A pro, it's faster. Those eggs are frozen, they're there, cycle's been done. All they have to do is ship it to your clinic, you fertilize, create those embryos. Con, will they survive the thaw? Will all of the eggs survive the thaw? And now you're creating embryos and then you're freezing embryos, right? Because most doctors nowadays do frozen embryo transfers. So there's that to consider. Also, let's say, for example, that you do a frozen cycle and for whatever reason, the sperm source is a carrier of a specific mutation, whatever panel was done for that sperm provider, was not the same panel that was done on that frozen donor. And so whatever testing was done, you don't get to do more testing on that donor. As opposed to fresh, you do get more control in real time of what testing that donor is doing to make sure that that genetic compatibility is there fully. And yeah, it is a little bit more economical, but again, if you really, especially if you're using a surrogate, for example, we don't really allow frozen egg bank eggs to be used for surrogacy unless you do tons of lots. But I mean, even then, because you want to have as many embryos as you can have and the best quality embryos. So you do have that control when you're doing a fresh cycle. When you do a fresh cycle, you get all the eggs that are produced. So it gives you more of a chance of having a higher number of embryos after it's all said and done. Not to mention also PGD or PGTA, genetic testing on those embryos. That also affects the overall numbers that you'll end up with. So when you consider it all, you are going to be better off in a more secure route to success if you do a fresh cycle. So you get all the eggs produced and you get as many embryos as you can, because also, as I can attest to, that first transfer may not take, that second transfer may not take. And so you want to have as many embryos on ice as possible for those tries.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And like you said, like there's no correct way to go through it. There's no like one way to have a baby, the correct way. Like it's all pros and cons. So I love that you listed those a little bit, not only being obviously we do fresh egg retrievals at hatch, but still giving those pros and cons on both sides so people can make a good informed decision since there are pros and cons to both approaches. Awesome. Okay, so let's jump into this database, Alex, and show us around a little bit of how it all looks. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to see
All
if
right,
you can take over.
let's see. Let's go for it. And I apologize for the million tabs that I have. That's just what it takes on the day to day.
Oh,
So
that's a lot. I saw the first one first, but now I see what you mean. Oh wow. Okay, let's talk
yeah,
about you, your
lots of
therapist, and how
tabs
much
to
you have a
keep track of.
meeting. Go ahead.
So basically what you will do, you will, let me actually, quick disclaimer, we are actually in process of launching our custom coded database, which is, I'm so excited about. So this particular exact database is going to end up looking a little bit different, but you can still log in, create an account, and for the time being, this is the platform that we're using. And I will explain on some of those things why we're actually doing our own custom coded database. But I can tell you here, once you log in, you will go to hatch.us. You will look for the looking for an egg donor button. It's right there on the home page, and you will create a login. And then you will be able to, when you log in, you'll be able to get into the database. And this is what it looks like. There's a lot of neat search criteria that you can use. As you can see here, you can, select the age range. You can search for any donor attribute, right? So if you want to look for academics, for example, that should be able to give you some options there that are focused on that. These girls are, have high education, for example. You can narrow it down by zip code, distance. You can go with previous donor. You can go with height, race. You have all these different options to choose from. Ethnicity. I know that that's important to a lot of intended parents. Eye color, hair color, blood type, religion, education level. And if you really want to get into the education level, you can really pick and choose there how high you want to go. Let's push one just for fun. So for example, if I use graduate degree, obviously it's going to also mark some of the other education levels. Okay, so we have that.
Well,
And this changes.
yeah. If you put out the academics, probably it will show you a little bit more of options, right?
Exactly, exactly. Now, again, because of this particular database and the way that it functions, I wish we had our actual database already live, but this can change too. Keep in mind that we have new and returning donors coming in all the time. So this will fluctuate. It goes in ebbs and flows. I know for a fact that we have donors that fall under this criteria. So, that's what I mean.
I think, Alex, if
Now,
you can just take out academics in at the top when you kind of just wrote by hand, probably it should help if you take that out and then just do the same search.
that is actually, you're so right. I apologize, guys. I rarely ever get in here as an intended parent. Edvin has more experience with that. Let's
Yes,
see
I'm
what that
always in
does.
there. I don't know why. I'm not gonna have any more babies, but I love to go inside and have a look.
Right? No, but see, it absolutely did that. So now that we took that search criteria, the word out, it opened up all these different options and all these different donors. So you can actually go, into test scores. You can go into location of
Mhm.
the donor if that's something that you care about because of logistics in comparison to your clinic.
Yeah.
You can AMH, this is something that you can type in, but again, it's not a feature that this particular database handles very well. So if we wanted to go to, we can try it. And actually, let's unclick all of these other options because then that confuses the panel a little bit. Yeah, this particular, we don't actually list AMH on the database. We want to make sure that we're giving you correct information in real time. So this is a good example of that. If you ever want to know about a particular donor, that's something that your match coordinator will provide to you. Because, and disclaimer on this is that, sometimes we have donors do AMH more than once. For example, if it's been a long time since the last time that they were tested. So, if that's updated, we want to give you real-time information. So this is basically, the search criteria and different donors in our database. Now let's go into, for example, if you ever like a donor a lot and you want to add her to your favorites, you would simply click on this little heart and then it would immediately put her on your favorites list. I selected a donor before to add to my favorites, so this is what it looks like. And when you go to her, you can view her profile. And their profiles are really detailed. As I mentioned, we always want to make sure that we have a good selection of pictures, childhood, natural, made up, candids, doing things that they enjoy. So you will see that. It will have a lot of information in terms of, general personal information, height, weight, all of those basic things. They will answer a lot of questions on this part. Have they lived outside of the US? What is their religion? Things like that. You can then keep going to each tab and really dive into more information. Health and medical, you will see their blood group, if they're previous, have they had any, surgeries or hospitalized? Do they use alcoholic beverages? Do they smoke? All these different things. You will see if they've been pregnant before or not, if they're on birth control, personal, health questions. Are you in good general health? You will have all of this. You will also see what kind of contraception they are on. Obviously, her partner had a vasectomy, so that's
I was
easy
gonna
done.
say,
Done.
hope it was a partner.
Right. Family and genetic. Again, you're going to see a lot of her family history because this is going to be important for you. Seeing, when you're looking at a donor, if you have, let's say in your family or in the sperm provider's family, there's a lot of cancer, for example, you probably want to avoid a donor that also has in her family history cancer noted. Anything that lines up that could, become a match issue, you want to keep an eye on. But you'll see if they're adopted or not, their biological parents, siblings, it'll tell you all kinds of information there. Grandparents, if, there's a cause of death, that will go into that. Oh gosh, not the flu. No. You will see if there are any known genetic conditions, we do ask that, and then they will enter that information. If you go into education, right? I know education is important to some intended parents. So you'll be able to take a look at that. You will see what their occupation is, their education level. You will see what their marks obtained are, and whatnot. And if you see, under the school section, if you see, for example, that it says ranking, top 76 regional universities, Midwest, anything like that, any ranking, that means that this has been verified. We always do try to verify education for our intended parent, for our donors. And so when we do get that information back, we're not always able to get that information back. We're kind of at the mercy of, school boards and all these different things that we have to go through, or sometimes it takes a little longer. But if you do see this box filled with that type of wording, you know that it's been verified.
That's great to
Um,
know.
mhm. Traits and characteristics. This is, little things like favorite foods, things that she enjoys, favorite books, personality, character. We always do also add our own notes in our view of the donor. And you can usually see that. I'm trying to find where it is. Okay, I will find it. It's probably on the other two tabs, but we also give our perspective of the donor and what we got out of meeting with her, and what we feel jumped at us in terms of, just to give you a third eye perspective on the donor's personality. For example, it would be under our comments. Not quite sure where there isn't one there, but this would usually have a whole blurb, and it could just be, again, it could just be this particular site and why it's not showing up on the database. Sometimes it breaks, which is why we're getting out of it. In terms of donations, we don't really do this part on the website. That's, again, something that you will get from your match coordinators. They will give you their stats for any previous cycles. They'll give you egg count, how it turned out, how many embryos from eggs, if there was a pregnancy, and so forth. Now, this is your favorites, right? Now, if you go to your portfolio, if you want to ever add a donor to your portfolio, you can click on this particular button and it will add her to the portfolio itself. And let's go see what the portfolio looks like. And I did save a couple of donors in here that I think are stellar for one reason or another, whether it's education or, background. So this is my portfolio, and these are some of the donors that I wanted to, showcase. I know we want to keep it to 2, but this is what you're looking at. And you could add your own comments. This is neat for you, just to, especially if you and your partner are both looking at donors and you want to add a note that you want to just remember for this particular donor, and then you can discuss it with your partner later. You guys can look at what you added in these notes. So again, for example, this particular donor, she has a graduate degree completed. She's very smart. She's wonderful. She's darling. So we really wanted to showcase her. Here's, you can see the personality and character. Here's where she's, you can see in her words how she describes herself and her personality. And she's also wonderful. She is pursuing her doctorate degree, which is really wonderful. One thing that I do want to mention is that we do and are known for a more premier style donor. So we don't only have donors that are, beautiful, and we really try to stay away from doctored pictures and making girls look just too beautiful. We want to make sure that you're seeing real girls here. So something that we are known for is to having that more premier style donor. So not just looks, but also background, education, different things like that. Just really well-rounded candidates.
Wonderful.
This is another donor that I really love. You saw her in my favorites. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of the different backgrounds, we thrive on having different background donors, Asian, all kinds of, backgrounds, East Indian, all these things that are hard to come by. So we pride ourselves on having a pretty good selection of those. She has her bachelor's degree. She's fully Asian. She's lovely, and full Korean, I should say. And here's another donor that I also adore. And same thing, she has a doctoral degree completed. And, when you click on them, you will get right to that profile, just like we saw earlier. So you'll be able to really save them to your favorites or to your portfolio. If you add them to your favorites, excuse me. If you add them to your favorites, And they are chosen. You will notice that they won't show up in your favorites list anymore. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. We do keep the site up in real time. So if donors do get matched, we will take them down. You will basically see it says under review when you click on that particular donor.
And even more important, like you said before, Alex, with the donor coordinator to really work with the coordinator for any of those questions of what is happening with my donor, why can't I see her, or anything like that.
Exactly.
Just reach out to the donor coordinator because as of now, not everything is going to be on here. I think that was a great run through, Alex, of the database and of some amazing donors. I think we had 371 donors in that database.
That's right.
But just like you said, the emphasis is maybe it's not on being the largest database. It's also about being that premium kind of selection of great, well-rounded donors. Which that's why I think I like sitting in this database, even though I'm already done with my part, as just looking at that because it is amazing. I just wanted to take a second and see if we have any questions. If anybody wants to set up the call or register for that database, you can do that here. So you can just go on hatch.us and fill out a short form. That's the best way to go inside of this to register for the database and select if you're interested in egg donation only or if you need surrogacy and egg donation to be kind of allocated to the right people. If it is surrogacy and egg donation both, you can also scan this one here and you can book a time there. You can also follow us on social media, etc. We also have a lot of these events coming up, these webinars every month. So the next month we're doing my surrogacy journey step by step, which is basically a webinar surrounding like each and every step through the surrogacy and egg donation journey. So make sure you see and sign up there if you want to hear more of these, and you can also see the recordings afterwards, of course. Let's see if we have any question. Okay,
I
so
see the question. It's about AMH. I touched on this earlier. Basically, we want to make sure that's something that your match coordinator will provide to you. You're welcome to reach out to us and ask really quickly if you want and you haven't had a consultation. We'll send you some preliminary details, which AMH would be part of that. But for the most part, you will get all of that from your match coordinator once you're set up with them.
Correct. All right, wonderful. Well, that's 70 minutes past and we should say goodbye. Thank you so much for everybody being here. Alex, thank you so much for powering through that sickness and all of that. Go and have a rest. I do know you have more meetings, unfortunately, but try to get a rest in between those as well.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I want to wish everyone the best of luck, whatever you decide to do. Hopefully we do get to be part of your journey whenever you make that leap. But thank you. And thank you, Edvin, for such a great presentation and great introduction.
Thank you all. So be safe out there and hope to see you soon again.